All right, you guys. Okay, so we are live now. Welcome to all my Mary Kay women out there all across the U.S. Welcome to our final hangout that we're doing for the One Thing Pacesetters program. This is National Sales Director Leah Laughlin, and you guys, I am here right now, well, not in person, but through technology. I'm here live with author and speaker and business executive Jay Papasan, and we get the privilege from learning from him and just hearing from him and asking questions and picking his brain tonight on his expertise about this book. And so his book, The One Thing, has been a book that's has been recommended to me for a couple of years now by a couple of different friends that I have and different mentors. I just kept hearing about the book. And so finally I decided, okay, I'm gonna read it, I'm gonna do this. And I decided to make it a part of this 4-week Pacesetters program that we're doing for the leaders in Mary Kay, so for directors and DIQs. And then one of the challenges was, of course, for you guys to tweet your victory every week. So a victory you were having in your business, you were supposed to tweet it with the hashtag The One Thing, and you were supposed to tag me, which you guys did. And so the 450 women who are a part of this program just really blew it up so much on Twitter, which enabled Jay and I to connect through social media. And then he just graciously asked how he could support us. And I asked if he could do this Q&A hangout, and without hesitation, he agreed, just to support our group in helping us really understand the concepts of the book and helping them to come alive. And so we're doing this Q&A style hangout here tonight for about 45 minutes is the time we're gonna commit to this. And I just really came up with a few questions that I wanted to know. As I was reading the book, I was taking notes and jotting down questions. And these are just questions I came up with that I wanted Jay to elaborate on, to bring the concepts of the book alive for us, specifically women in Mary Kay. I know that these answers can apply to anyone, but I tried to direct them to the experience that we have as we build Mary Kay businesses alongside of being wives and moms and having a life in addition to our Mary Kay business. And so before I jump into the first question, you guys, I did want to share a little bit more information about our guest speaker tonight. I know some of you have followed him on social media and have made comments and have kind of checked him out on Instagram and Twitter, but just wanted to give you a couple of facts about him. He is a writer and business executive. Of course, he's known for the book we just read, The One Thing, which that book was #1 on the Wall Street Journal business bestseller. And then he also co-authored The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, which became a New York Times bestseller. He was the vice president, or he is the vice president and publishing and executive editor at Keller Williams Realty. And then he and his wife, Wendy, are owners of the Papasan real estate team. And then in 2014, he was named one of the most powerful people in real estate. I found this out on Wikipedia. It was nice to have a page where I could just catch up on your accolades and follow your career. And so the one thing I wanted to add before I ask the first question is, as I followed Jay on Instagram and Twitter, it's just so easy to tell that he's a man who also values his family and his marriage. And you can just tell that he has a life outside of his very, very successful business. And it's refreshing for me to see someone very, very successful, but then also watch you enjoy your life and enjoy the journey at the same time, which is something we value a lot in Mary Kay. And so, Jay, we're just grateful for your time tonight. We're so very grateful that you graciously gave us 45 minutes on this Monday night. And we want to get started with the questions now. So I'm going to jump right into the first one.
Can I jump in and into that gracious intro? That was great. I love that you acknowledged the fact that I spend a lot of time with the wife and kids. They're why I do it all, and I mean that.
Yeah, well, we see that. We see that. It's obvious when you look at your Instagram that that's a value system that you have, and really that you live out the concepts of the one thing. Because it really is about having wild success while having a life at the same time. And it's obvious that you're not just talking about it, you're living it. And we appreciate that. So, so the first question was about counterbalancing. Okay, we have heard in Mary Kay that there's no such thing as balance. Okay, so we knew that. We like to call it harmony. but I love the concept of counterbalancing, especially the visuals that were used in the book. And so, of course, as I shared with you, we're mainly wives and moms in Mary Kay. We're building businesses anywhere. I just took a stab, and I think everyone is going to land within this time frame, but anywhere from 15 hours a week to 40 hours a week. And I would guess most directors are around 20 to 30 hours a week on average. And so what are some stories and some examples that you can give us about counterbalancing and what that looks like, especially when there's only part-time hours available to work our businesses, not necessarily that full 40 hours a week? So
right,
tackle that question.
All right, that's a great question. Whenever I teach this, like at a live seminar, I usually ask people, I'll say, the next lie is counterbalancing is a lie. And I'll just get everybody to stand up, because now we're like a half hour into a normal seminar. And I'll just say, I want everybody to stand on one foot if you're able. And so just imagine a whole bunch of people in an audience, 1,000 people standing on one foot. And I just ask the simple question, are you balanced or are you balancing? And everybody will chuckle and say, I'm balancing. And I say, great, you passed the test, sit down. And I think the biggest myth about the whole counterbalancing or balanced idea is that it's this destination we get to arrive at. And it's really a journey that you have to take every single day. And it's one of those things that if you neglect it, you will find yourself out of balance in a way that it's very hard to recover from. So, counterbalancing is like, it's kind of half science, half art. I don't believe in, quote, quality time. Getting 10 minutes with your kids that's really awesome in the morning does not replace missing a birthday. It doesn't replace missing really important memories. So what you do is you have to ask kind of on a daily basis, what's the most important thing I can do for my business, for my family? You have those two buckets, and you just never neglect the family for very long. Well, I just came back from our Keller Williams Realty convention. We had 15,000 people in New Orleans for 3 days. And so for about 5 days, and maybe 3 days before that, really, I was not as present as I would like to be with my family. My kids are too small to take them to New Orleans. So when I came back, I took off 4 days, and I took my kids out of school. And so I think the lesson that I usually tell people is you can neglect the small things at work. Big success is about focusing on the big stuff at work. And in our industry, in your industry, I believe that's lead generation. The person who goes out and hustles for the most clients and then delivers the best service is always going to win. It's just a couple of things you have to do. It's not all the little stuff. And so you can have all kinds of chaos erupting around you, and that's okay in your work life. But at home, you've got to constantly be attending to your health, your spirituality, your personal life, your family life. And I break family life. My wife and I every year ask the question, what's the one thing we can do this year for Gus? That's my 11-year-old son. What's the one thing we can do this year for Veronica? That's my 10-year-old daughter. What's the one thing we can do for our marriage? And at this point in our lives, we have aging parents. What's the one thing we can do for her parents and my parents? And we ask that question, and we try to develop rituals. And so a couple of examples are, for our health, we got creative 3 times a week. And this has been going on for 5 years. We have a trainer come to our house because I didn't want to put the kids in babysitting. I didn't want to leave them behind. I didn't want to do it without my wife. We wanted to do it together. We started out getting up at 5 a.m. 3 times a week so we could work out together. And I didn't know that was going to be marriage counseling, but it's awesome counseling. Doing burpees in the driveway will just it gets everything out, right? Our trainer is now our counselor. He's like, wow, you guys go at it. And I'm like, yeah, we go at it, but it's a lot of fun. Our kids are 16 months apart. And our daughter, the second one, was colicky. And there were nights, I can remember one night vividly where we were both so sleep deprived. We're snapping at each other because you can't yell at the kids. You can't help their crying. And I literally got shots of tequila out, put them on the counter, and I was like, friends, enemies, right? We got married to have these kids, and we had to come up with something to fix that. And so an example I always share, and it's how we solved the problem. And I think since our kids have been, the youngest was about 18 months, we started doing a midweek date night. We tried to do it on Friday and Saturday nights as a ritual. And the problem with that is you can't get a babysitter, right? Everybody else wants to go out on Friday and Saturday nights. So we have this weird thing. We have date night on Wednesday night. Well, here's the thing. We always get to have it. Nobody else is throwing a party on Wednesday night. The movie's never sold out, and there's always a table at our favorite restaurant. And the idea was we never have to go more than 7 days without reminding ourselves, well, we had these red racks to begin with, right? We have these kids, they're wonderful and they're tough. But we want to make sure that if the marriage isn't strong, we can't be good parents. And so those are just two examples. And we have rituals with our family. You know, we plan way out in advance to make sure we get regular time. And I call my mom every week because I'm horrible about doing that. So you develop rituals, right, that become habits, and we just kind of implemented them as a family one at a time. So does that give you some examples of how kind of we're personally dealing with it?
It does. It does. And I like what you said about, you know, you were in New Orleans for 5 days, and I'm sure that was a lot of prep on the front end, and then you were at the trip, but then took 4 days off when you got back and took the kids out of school. And so would that be an example? I just keep picturing the visual in the book where the line was really wide
right
on the business side. So like that would be New Orleans, really wide, 5 days gone, lots of work to prep for that.
If I showed you my phone, there was 18,000 emails in my inbox by the time that was over. So I was way out of balance at work, but I was doing the one thing that mattered most.
Okay. And so balancing the family is when you get back, that business line is coming way in.
Well,
after
the business
being
line,
really wide, it's coming further in because the family time is being prioritized a little bit more aggressively.
Mm-hmm. That graphic, and I wish I could tell you what page number it is. I can't. But the idea of the work line going very wide is that if the center line is balance, you allow work, and it's okay if you're focused on your one thing. You can get way out of balance at work. But the reason the lifeline stays close is you never go so far away from your health, your family. Those are things that are much more precious that you can't quickly get back and recapture that. You know, if you neglect your health for too long, you won't have it. You know, Gary told the story, my co-author in the book, of interviewing an executive that was about to travel the world, and he had spent his entire life working, and he said, I did it for my kids. And he had placed a bet that at the end of his career, they would still want to hang out with him when he wasn't there, and miss birthday parties. Missing a 6-year-old birthday party, you don't get that back by being at the 16-year-old. And so you make some sacrifices at work to make sure that you never sacrifice those things, but success at work and success at home are not mutually exclusive, period. I don't believe it. I won't accept it. And I know too many people who have conquered it. You just have to be creative and find a way to make both work. And you can't neglect the home life for long. I believe that firmly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I do think it does start with that belief that you can have both and you can do both well. And I think a lot of women are maybe challenged by that, or maybe not living in that belief that they can do both well and both successfully. So
yeah, you got to put it out there and get the world behind you. I think when people put it out there and enlist the support, when we had the kids, my wife left her job for 5 years before she started a real estate career. And when our youngest went into, preschool is when she started her career again. And we had some tough talks. She's like, you know what? The laundry is your job now. And it's my job to this day. I do it on Saturdays, and my kids are getting dirty and old enough now. I do it like 3 times a week. I do the dishes. I prepared the meal the last 3 nights. And it wasn't what I wanted to hear, but that's how a partnership works. So those are not fun conversations, but they're necessary ones. And not everyone's relationship might work out that way. Like, I used to do the bills. She took them over when she stayed home, and she still kind of has them. And, it's a trade-off. That's kind of what the relationship is. But we had to have some real conversations about how can we make this work so that we could both be successful in our careers and also have a successful marriage and family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and talk a little bit more about your wife, because I know you shared with me that she has been very successful, and it has been part-time. It sounded like, for the most part, not a full-time career, but has been very successful. So are there any just key things that she did that you could share with us that you think might relate to just what we're facing as women trying to build businesses while also having family as a priority.
Absolutely. And, it's funny, we co-taught a class like twice in the last month called How to Have a Big Business and Still Have a Life. Because in real estate, I'm sure it's in your industry too, a lot of people get caught up servicing all their business and success, and they can get a little lost in it. And she's done a great job of navigating that. So when our youngest went back to school, or started school, she allowed herself to work in real estate from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the first 2 years. And so, those hours, right? I'm going to drop them off and I'm going to pick them up, because I'm not going to abandon that part. But while they're gone, I can start my career. And, I heard her talking to the son of our former president, Mary Tennant. And she's like, how have you built this business? Because by the second year, she was doing about 12 million in volume, which is a lot. I think she sold, 45 houses, and the average realtor sells 9. And it's like, how did you do that? Well, I knew that I had a very small amount of time to be successful. So I just went in and did my number one job. And I'm paraphrasing here, but she went in and she lead generated. She created enough business that she quickly, and before she started pocketing a lot of money, she hired a part-time assistant, another mom, to work for her 20 hours a week. So instead of letting her lifestyle rise with her income, and this is really the wisest thing she did, she capped her income and immediately took the new money as she grew her business and invested it in people. Today, she's 5.5 years into the business. Her team has got 12 people on it. She doesn't meet with buyers anymore. And she's almost to the point where she doesn't have to meet with sellers anymore. And she's in the top 50, realtors in one of the largest, regions in the world. And I think she's very successful, but that's the key. If I had to say, everyone in your group is very successful. As you become more successful, taking more of that income into your personal life, invest it back into your business. And the most valuable thing you can do is people, because that buys you time back. And buying back your time is how you do all this.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I wrote down, she didn't let her lifestyle rise with the income. She invested in getting help.
People become prisoners to their Mercedes and their house.
Yeah.
Okay, because the market shifts. Maybe people don't have enough money to buy makeup or real estate, whatever it is. And I want to have people around me to help me get the business up and running, and so does she. And I don't want to be a prisoner to things. So we just made that decision early on. We drive cars that are paid off, and we live in a nice house, but we didn't take it. People walk in our house and say, but you've written all these best-selling books. You're an executive in this company. And for a real estate company, we have a fairly humble abode. It's a very valuable home in an older neighborhood, but it's not a showy home. And it's like The Millionaire Next Door. We read that book and we got on the same page, and we just invested in people. And that's, $20,000 for an assistant, or we paid $45,000 or so to get Rosalind Luna. Okay. We call her the Great and Powerful Roz. This woman had been a consultant like at Accenture. She traveled the world training in corporations, and she had a baby daughter that she wasn't seeing. And so she applied as a job to be an assistant to my wife. And she took, I think, a $20,000 pay cut because she saw someone would help her refine that balance. And she worked with us for 3 years, helped us build this enormous team. And when her spouse got a job in St. Louis, she said, can I start the Papasan real estate team, properties group in St. Louis? And so she just launched, which nobody does in residential real estate as an agent. We're not a brokerage. She just launched our expansion team in St. Louis. And you find the right talent, and it's an infinite return. And I just can't hit that point hard enough.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, let me jump to the next question. And it's regarding the concept of lining up the dominoes. Okay, so what are a few examples of what this looks like? And even within, I guess, different time frames. So do you do this within a time block, within a day, within a week, within a year? Or I'm assuming all of the above. But I just wanted to hear examples of and stories of lining up the dominoes, and how we can take that concept and really apply it to our time blocks. Really is what I'm more interested in what that looks like.
Well, the domino metaphor, which is the one thing both my kids really remember about the book, right? They've seen me teach it a few times, but they got that. And it's a concession to the fact that even if we know what our one thing is, there's always a lot of other stuff we have to do. So to go back to Wendy, because she was willing to build more business than she could service by herself, she very quickly, she got fairly out of balance before she then was able to invest in leverage and get back. And so that one activity allowed her to hire first one, then two assistants to support her sales operation. And that allowed her to grow really fast with a minimum amount of her own time invested. And so that's a sense of you're doing your one thing actually allows a lot of other things to become easier. That's one of the metaphors. Another way to kind of talk about lining up your dominoes. Did y'all talk about goal setting to the now?
Ask that again.
Did you talk about goal setting to the now in your hangouts together?
We talk about a lot of goal setting. We didn't necessarily use that term, but we're familiar with that, and we've done a lot of goal setting training. So
okay, well, one of the conventions in the book, we call it goal setting to the now. And it plays with this idea that the farther away a goal is from you in time, the less motivated we are to do the right things right now. So one of the ways we teach people to line up their dominoes is go way out. So, say for you, Leah, it's like in 5 years, imagine where you want your business operation to be. And you just write that number down. Say, I want to be doing, 10 million in sales, whatever it would be. And then you go backwards and you say, great, based on that someday goal, where would you have to be in, say, 5 years to feel like you're absolutely on track? What's the one thing that you would have accomplished? And people will say what that is. I can't say that answer for you. And then you stop right there and you say, great, based on your 5-year goal, what would you have to accomplish this year? What's the one thing that if you did it, you would feel like you were on track for your 5-year goal? Then people will tell you that answer. And now, all right, so someday in 5-year goals, nobody has a crystal ball. That's that's cloudy. But you bring it back to 1 year, people are getting kind of, confident in their answers, even if they're not sure it lines up. And then you say, all right, great. Based on your 1-year goal, what would you have to accomplish this month to feel like you were on track for your annual goal? Most people can come up with a pretty close approximation of that. You work backwards from there. Great. Based on your monthly goal, what would you have to do this week? You see the game we're playing? Based on the weekly goal, what do you have to do today? And based on what you have to do today, what do you have to do right now? And so you're bringing this distant goal into the now, and we get a lot of clarity on what we need to be doing. And that helps us stay motivated in doing the long-term activities that actually lead to long-term success. One of the lies that didn't make it into the book, and I don't really regret this, but it's one of the things that I talk about a lot, is the low-hanging fruit. Okay. And so we call the low-hanging fruit was a lie because a lot of times we look up as entrepreneurs and we're like, wow, I can go make this sale, or I can go do this new opportunity. And it actually will lead to revenue right now. I mean, it makes total sense right now. But if you think about your dominoes lined up way out in the future, right, you might be actually heading in the opposite direction and not even know it. Mm-hmm. And so it can take you away from your long-term focus. You can lose your rhythm and you can lose your momentum. And so a really important exercise is to get people, can you get clear about where you want to be in the distant future, and then work backwards from that to what you should be doing this week, this month, this year. And what I usually tell people, like at the time when I published the book, my kids were just learning to ride their bikes. And I was like, remember what it was like to ride a bike. You're a little kid. Parents are these magical creatures. They have cell phones. They have credit cards. They can ride a bike. I could pick up my son and throw him across the pool, right? And then like they're riding this bike and it was terrifying to them. They wanted pads around their elbows, a pillow on their butt, the whole thing. And then once that's over, it was like, what was I so afraid of? A lot of people look at that really big distant goal and they shut down. They're afraid to put something really big out there. A huge truth in life is as you start knocking down those dominoes, you're going to grow up too as a business person. So write the biggest number that you could possibly imagine out there and work backwards to this year, and know that at the end of this year, you'll be so much smarter about what it will take the next year to be on track for that 5-year goal. A lot of times you can get back on track or completely on track within just a couple of years, even if you had no idea where to start. I've seen people do it again and again. They just kind of take that leap of faith, and as they do, they learn so much faster than they can learn any other way, and they course correct because they keep asking that question. I'll just say this, and then I'll let you jump in, because I know you had to kind of take turns to make this work. But I sat there and I listened to Gary coach about, and Gary Keller has now built the largest real estate firm in the world. And he would coach people in this way. And I was like, how did you arrive at what they needed to be doing? And he would just do this exercise. Okay. I said, we've got to capture that, because only really successful people think this way. But I saw him do it. I read, Bill Gates was doing it in an interview. I watched so many successful people that we interviewed. When you ask them how they were thinking about their goals, in one form or another, that's how they would talk about how they got clear about what they were doing today. Does that make sense? Does that help you understand the domino alignment?
Yes, it does. And so with the low-hanging fruit, so you would know that it's low-hanging fruit if you're looking at the 1 year, 5 year, someday goals, and it's not really getting you closer. So it's more of a distraction, even though it's an immediate sale or an immediate win.
Exactly. Right. Okay. Maybe, what you need to be doing is working on a group of individuals that will give you business all the time throughout the year instead of this one quick sale. And by neglecting the bigger purpose, you're actually kind of moving backwards from your goals. That may not be the best example. In my industry, this is sales. You're so lucky you get to work with moms. I think moms are so much more focused than a lot of the people I work with. It's like squirrel, they're off and running. But it's so easy for entrepreneurs to see that low-hanging fruit, and they're often chasing it. And so you just have to kind of remind yourself. I'll show you. I have a notebook. I keep it with me all the time, and in it are my 1 year goals, my 5 year goals for my family, and my big goals from all of my businesses. And I just keep that close so that every week we sit down and we look at this. As a business people, I meet with my people. I look at it as a business person. A business plan should fit on one page, real simple. I want to keep it with me all the time so I can be reminded of what my course is. And that helps you stay on track. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so I'm going to jump to my next question. And the book suggests devoting 4 hours to your one thing each day. And so what are some suggestions or examples or stories if a work day really is only 4 hours? Because I remember seeing the circle with the pie. The visuals really helped me to understand it. But it was a circle, and then half of it was filled in with your one thing for 4 hours, and then the other half was everything else that there is to do. And so if you only have 4 hours, because I think a lot of Mary Kay women are working around 20 to 30 hours a week. So give us some hope that extraordinary results can still be achieved even when we can't maybe devote the full 4 hours each day to the one thing.
Sure. It's funny. I've watched Gary preach this message before we even called it the one thing. And it started 1 year, it was 2 hours a day. And then the next year it was 3 hours a day. And then the next year it was 4 hours a day. And I was like, okay, when do we stop? And he goes, that's it. Because most people are going to work an 8 hour day, and they should be devoting half of their day to their most important work. And the reality is, if you come into the office and you've blocked it off in your calendar to put in 4 hours of an 8 hour day on your one thing, you might get 2 really productive hours in there, unless you're really disciplined and practiced at it. And you might get more because you have to kind of warm up, right? You have to kind of do some stuff beforehand. But I think the metaphor there is not for, in your situation, for a 20-hour work week, I'd say spend 2 hours a day. Could you take half of your working day and be creating new business, which is, I think, any salesperson's one thing is going to be, how am I building my business, right? It is growth. If you're not growing, you're shrinking and you can be in trouble fast. The other half can be servicing the business. And it's a lot easier. It takes a lot less discipline to service the business than it does to create it. So you just start with that really tough nugget and you hit it as hard as you can. So in this instance, come in at 9 in the morning. This is what my wife did. She would take 2 hours and call her sphere. Who do you know that needs to buy or sell real estate, right? She would call and ask for business in her own way, not in a scripted way. She just came up with her own way of connecting with the people who valued her, who she valued. They would refer her to business. and the afternoons were for appointments. Her third year in the business, we got a nanny, okay? This was another form of leverage. And that nanny would come and 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, would pick up our kids from school and watch them till we got home at 5:30. And that allowed Wendy to start doing listing appointments in the afternoon. Because for her, scheduling the appointments was a big deal if she had really limited her time. So to answer your question, take yourself off the hook. If you're working 20 hours, you don't have to give all 20 to your one thing. That's unreasonable. The goal here would be, could you devote half of your time at work to your most important work and see where that took you?
Okay. And this is a question I'm just going to throw in there from really focusing on these concepts, especially last week. The chaos that abounds. I noticed that in just a real way last week with trying to practice the focus on the one thing and devoting a certain amount of time to it. And so everything else was just piling up. And I like things to be tidy. I like my desk to be clean. I like my mail to be checked. I like my inbox to be responded to. And that was not happening last week. And so the chaos that was mounting while I was focusing on my one thing, I mean, it almost like gave me a panic attack. So how do you let that chaos, and then when do you address the chaos? At what point is it like the chaos has gotten to be too chaotic, so I need to tame this lion?
The first two thieves, right, are inability to say no and fear of chaos.
Yeah.
And I kind of believe that most people kind of tilt one way or the other. They either are really oriented towards people or task. I personally am task oriented.
And I am task oriented.
There you go. And people who are people oriented tend to struggle with not saying no. They want to have those relationships, so they struggle saying no to other people so they can say yes to their one thing. And that becomes the challenge. And I've spent whole sessions trying to coach people on all the ways that we say no without actually uttering N-O. You can say, it's kind of no now, yes later. You know, yes, if you do this first. We do this with our kids all the time. We just don't do it with adults, right? Yes, you can have more video time if you do your homework. We put conditions on things. No, we can't do that right now. We have to do this, but you can do it later. And you just have to change those scripts a little bit so that we can negotiate our time. So to address your question, my personal great fear, right, it's all the chaos that, I mean, I'm borderline OCD. My wife would tell you. I come home, you know, like I talk about cleaning the dishes and the laundry like it's a chore. I take a certain amount of pleasure in this, okay? It's perverse. But that's how I'm wired. But at work, I've learned that I have to ignore it because it's more important for me to get home. And like, if you're watching Instagram right now, like our ritual in the afternoons is we go walk the dog in the park with the kids, or it's just me and Wendy. And that's like, if we start our day with a workout 2 or 3 days a week, usually 3, probably 4 or 5 days a week, we're ending it with a walk in the park. And that bookend to me is worth me being focused at work. And so you see the brush fire start, and I'll guarantee you it creates anxiety. But if you're clear about why your one thing is your one thing, it will allow you to say no to those things longer. It's one of the reasons that as soon as I could afford it, I got a personal assistant, not a personal assistant, an EA, an executive assistant, an assistant. Because essentially what an EA does is take all those 80% tasks off your plate. I worked with this lady, Teresa Metcalf. She was just amazing. She'd been a lawyer, decided she didn't want to spend that much time away from her family, became an EA. I had the privilege of working with her for 5 years. She would see me start tidying up my office, and she would come in, take the folders out of my hand and say, this is my job, go back to writing. And she kept me on my task. And I'll just say this one last little bit. Just it's an acknowledgement to it. I don't know if it's a solution to it, but probably every 2 to 3 weeks, even when we're in full writing mode, Gary and I will just say, can we take a break today? I need a mental sanity day. And we'll essentially blow off writing for a day. And, you know, I don't love saying that because I don't want people to do that every day. But it's a reality. Like, at some point, the 80% work, right, on the Pareto principle, the 80-20, will be so neglected, it becomes your 20% to take care of it, period. You can't neglect it any longer and be a responsible parent, taxpayer, whatever it is that you've neglected, it has to be addressed. And so that happens periodically. And I don't want to do it on a Saturday if I can avoid it. I have done that a couple of times, but every now and then I'll just reprioritize that day and say, you know what? If I can't work because this is bothering so much, I need to address it and get it out of the way. Okay. It's one of the reasons why Gary and I, his world's so big. We often don't start our writing until about 10 o'clock, and we refer to those first 2 hours of the day as clearing the decks. We just have to get all of that stuff out of the way, all the requests, all of the answers. I don't really want to get lost in my email. I hate that, but I will make sure that there's no bombs. And then I can actually go into my time block with a clear conscience and an open mind saying, I'm going to do my work. Those are our strategies. I've heard others, but those work for us. Okay, that's good. That's helpful. You called it clearing the desk? The decks, like the decks of a ship. Yeah, okay. Right? So we start off and you know, I can start probably at 9 because I get up so early in the morning, but 10 o'clock is about the time that he has all of the people in his life, they have their marching orders, they're off and running, and now he can focus without someone knocking on the door saying, I need your help. Okay. And so we just established that let's clear the decks, get all of the 80% stuff out of the way, and then really hit it hard, still before noon, so we can start our writing day. Okay, that's good. And one thing that I just want to make sure everyone heard you say was the bookends to your day, how you start the day and finish the day. We talk a lot in Mary Kay about, you know, having the first couple of hours very structured in your day so you get a strong, fast start, and then having the last couple of hours of either your working day or just your day structured so you have a good, solid finish to it. And so what was it, well, your bookends were the workout in the morning with your wife and then the walk in the evening with your wife? That's the bookends. My life envelops my work life, right? So you know, I start my day with family time. I end my day with family time. And my work life usually begins, you know, sometimes before I leave the house, I'll look at my calendar and ask the question, you know, my calendar is my boss. I time block my priorities. So what is it that I time block today, and do I have enough time? And we talk about it as extreme Pareto early in the book. And I do an exercise like, what are the 2 or 3 things that if I got them done, I would have an absolutely successful day today? And those become my first priorities when I really hit the office. So I start my day with a small analysis of what am I setting out to do? And I try to end my day, like before I turn it off and put the cell phone in my, you know, in my back office at home. I don't carry it around with me at home. I try to get it out of there. I try to ask, how did I do? So you can bookend your work day too. That analysis of what do I intend to do and how did I do? That's one of the ways people really find out where their strength zones are. They start to see a pattern. Wow, on the days that I made my sales calls, I set this many appointments. On the days that I did this, I set this much. And you start to get a sense of what your one thing is by doing that. That's not me. That's actually Peter Drucker. He talked about that back in the 60s. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. Okay, so I'm going to finish. I know we only have a couple of minutes. So I'm going to finish with the last question, and we'll wrap it up with this one. So when you decide what your one thing is and you create your time blocks throughout the week to work on the one thing, is it normal that it would involve a variety of activities? Okay, so for example, my one thing that it's going to take for me to move to the next level in my business is coaching consultants in my unit who are a part of my team to move up into leadership. But that does involve several different activities. And so would the different activities be like lining up the dominoes within one time block? I just want to really make sure I'm understanding that concept really clearly. You know, I think follow your instincts, right? Ask the question, am I really doing the most important work? If you're doing paperwork around your coaching calls, that's probably not it. I know I have friends that do coaching full time, and they'll have a rhythm of it's a 30-minute call, it's 15 minutes of prep. It's a 30-minute call, it's 15 minutes of prep. It's a small break, and they create a rhythm to their day, and they have to do a certain amount of wrapping up and preparing before every call, right? What did we agree that we were going to accomplish for next week? You want to record that as the coach so that you can bring it up the next week. So the essentials that you do, but billing them or whatever, any other paperwork or incidentals, you push that way outside of that zone. For me, writing is essentially 3 activities. I'm either reading something, right? So it's reading, researching, or writing. And all of those I've come to understand use my writer's brain. And if I'm trying to be creative, I need a lot of dots to connect. And that means I have to read a lot of books, and I have to be thinking about them critically. And then I have to be modeling and researching and doing interviews. And I actually have to be writing. And I feel like I've had a productive writing block when I do a lot of any of those things. And I go through phases. Like right now, we're researching our next book. So I'm reading and researching. At some point, we'll flip the switch and we'll almost exclusively be writing until we go back to researching the next book. And it just becomes a rhythm. But it's clearly the priority for the business at that time, because my livelihood, what we're trying to do, depends on us not just producing one great book, but the next book and the next book. That's what I want to do forever.
Okay. And so, okay, this is the last question, I promise. And I'm going to put you on the spot here because I didn't send this one to you ahead of time. So what is your someday goal? What is that big someday goal for you?
Gosh, it's hard to say because I'm kind of doing it. What we've established right now in our 5-year goals, we want to travel the month for 6 years travel the world with our kids for 6 months. So we want to have a lifestyle that allows us to live abroad for 6 months. My wife and I both really love travel. A huge goal, someday goal for me. I've got them in different categories. On page 114, you got the 7 circles, right? We've got one in every single one of those. We have a net worth goal, right? For our finances, I wrote a book on investing. The one thing that we track as a family is what's our net worth. And we use Mint for that. Because if your net worth is growing, that means you have more cash, you're spending less than you earn, all of those things. So we have a net worth goal for our family. And then we have some other things, I wanted to have a ranch. We already kind of got that. So we set some big goals that were really about us living the life that we want to live and feeling secure in that, and, goals for our children. So I don't know, maybe I'm boring. Like I'm not going to buy an island. I'm not going to have a tiger on a gold leash, like the song, right? It's going to be simple stuff. I envision writing books, which is what I love to do, and helping people until I just can't do it anymore. Yeah. And I want to do that in a way that I can hopefully inspire my kids to be entrepreneurs and help change lives of their own.
Yeah, well, traveling 6 months abroad with your kids, that's not boring. That's pretty interesting, actually. So
my wife and I both lived abroad at different times, so it's kind of a value of our family.
Yeah, that's neat. So this has been awesome. I'm sad that it's over. It went by way too quickly. So I just want to say from all of the women who are a part of this, either live or who are going to watch the recording, we just want to collectively thank you, and we just appreciate your time that you've so graciously given to us. And it's just been neat to study the concepts of this book, and we're excited to put them in action. And I really believe it's going to be a game changer for the women who've really read it, studied it, and who are ready to take action on it. So thank you again.
I'm seeing the results on Twitter. That's what got me involved in the first place. I was like, wow, these people are killing it using the book. I love it. It gets me excited. So thank you.
Keep watching us.
Inviting me. I love it.
Yeah, keep watching. You're going to see amazing things unfold here. So
I'll be paying attention.
Good. Well, thank you again, Jay. Have a great night.
Much.
Take care.